But no one's above the law in the U.S. That's what Nancy Pelosi assured us.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one is above the law.
No one is above the law.
Nobody is above the law.
No one 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 is above the law.
This
Oh, son of a bitch.
that was, in case you don't know, Joe Biden's son-in-law, son outlaw, not son-in-law, outlaw son, Hunter Biden, walking out of a courtroom after being pardoned by Joe Biden, who promised that he would not pardon his son, Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was convicted of lying on an application an application to own a handgun about being an addict or having been addicted to drugs. Is that right? It was a completely bogus conviction. Jack Smith cooked up.
No. It wasn't Jack Smith, was it?
It wasn't Jack Smith.
I think it was a different special counsel. Yeah.
Okay. All right. The special counsel
is another failed special counsel, but yeah, this is a different one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, a special counsel charged Hunter Biden with kind of a bogus throwaway crime that really, I don't think anyone should be necessarily charged with. If they are charged, it should be like, very low level slap on the wrist. And it's why I support gun regulations and all that. Handgun laws are usually used against the poor in this country. Those who usually get hit with those. But Hunter Biden was given that charge, obviously, in my view, and I just think it's obvious, to avoid investigating and charging him for the real Titanic crimes dating back to 2014 that relate to Project Ukraine, the graft, the foreign influence operations that he was involved in through Burisma with, 15% to the big guy, referring to Joe Biden. And in the end, he was pardoned. What are your thoughts on the pardoning of Hunter Biden? Did you expect this?
I guess I'm not surprised by it. My only question to you in your point about Ukraine is sure, what the Bidens were up to in Ukraine is very corrupt, but was it actually illegal given how, legalized corruption has become? So I don't know if Hunter was vulnerable to charges there. Maybe you know more about that than I do, but certainly it's shady. And funnily enough, but actually to your point, which I think bolsters your speculation, Biden's pardon of his son, it doesn't just cover, the crimes he was convicted of, like the tax evasion and the gun charge. It dates back to January 2014. And what happened right after January 2014, the following month, there was a coup in Ukraine, which overthrew the government there, backed by Biden. And a few months after that, that's when Hunter Biden got the lucrative board seat on Burisma. So I guess that's actually an argument for your speculation there about, why these relatively minor charges were brought against Hunter Biden rather than looking back at 2014, which is the period covered by the pardon. So that's interesting. Let me play one more clip of just how corporate media has been covering Joe Biden for a long time now, and his promises not to pardon his son.
Accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning his son.
A little less volume.
Could do. These are federal charges.
Right.
Less volume?
A little less.
Okay, yeah. These MSNBC pundits are too loud for the ears. Fair enough.
He is not doing it because he is living what it means to have a rule of law in this country. Yeah. And then it is if you want to know if he believes it, you can actually see what is happening with his own son.
The president accepted his sentence.
He is not pardoning.
There we go. And by the way, that's Andrew Weissman, who was a key prosecutor on the Mueller team. So
yeah,
we're talking earlier about Russiagate. So yeah, So
he's
it's funny.
living the rule of law.
Yes, yes. Biden's lived experience literally is the rule of law, according to MSNBC. But yeah, so it's funny. This whole thing is funny after this whole thing about Trump being a seismic threat to democracy. He was going to use the pardon power to get his family off the hook, and then Joe Biden goes ahead and does that thing. It's part of Democrats' never-ending humiliation as they're forced to reckon with just the corrupt party that they've become and the scam party that they've become. So it's comical. I also, have to say too, the moral outrage about it, about Biden doing this when he's facilitated a year-long genocide of a defenseless death camp in Gaza, that ranks to me as a much higher moral outrage. I mean, that's an obvious point to make, but I just think that has to be noted. But yeah, it's funny. I mean, it's funny to see.
It's the way Washington works now. Trump installs family members and gives them security clearances, and he would do the same thing for his son. The difference is Trump would just openly say, yeah, my son, I'll pardon him. But Joe Biden was always saying Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. And so, I mean, he's making good on that. Why was he even allowed to say that? Clearly he did some things wrong. And Aaron, there were crimes that also could have been investigated, like possible human trafficking, sexual acts with minors, solicitation on an industrial scale of prostitution, drugs, which don't relate to Ukraine or China. I mean, there were a lot of shady business deals with Devin Archer, a member of the Kerry family, the Kerry Hines family, that, obviously the Biden inner circle, the Biden gang, did not want investigated, which is why Tony Blinken, longtime Biden operative, who I think originally served with Biden on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, mobilized scores of former national security spooks and hacks to claim that his laptop was Russian disinformation, that there was nothing to see in there, because obviously they were afraid of a real investigation. But I think the other point to make here is the Joe Biden we knew, that I grew up with, was a right-wing, tough-on-crime Democrat who was at the forefront of the war on drugs alongside Bill Clinton, and someone who called for bulldozing raves and arresting rave promoters, but who also bragged about how many people he got thrown in jail for selling crack, specifically crack. When is he going to pardon any of those poor people, nonviolent offenders, for selling crack cocaine when his son was on camera?
If you have
this will get us
a
demonetized.
piece of crack cocaine no bigger than this quarter that I'm holding in my hand.
By the way, the footage on the right, this is footage shot by Hunter Biden.
$1/4 of $1. We passed a law through the leadership of Senator Thurmond and myself and others, a law that says if you're caught with that, you go to jail for 5 years. You get no probation. You get nothing other than 5 years in jail. Judge doesn't have a choice. Under our forfeiture statutes, the government can take everything you own, everything from your car to your house, your bank account, not merely what they confiscate in terms of the dollars from the transaction that you've just got caught engaging in. They can take everything. I don't care why they become a sociopath. We have an obligation to cordon them off from the rest of society. They are in jail, away from my mother, your husband, our families. So I don't want to ask what made them do this. They must be taken off the street.
I mean, the hypocrisy is just so staggering. And Joe Biden's legacy has been so damaging to people around the world, but also right here in our cities, where he passed laws preventing judges from considering, oh, maybe this young man who's trying to make money off the black market because he's poor has a child, and the child's mother might need him at home. and we could put him out on parole and make sure that he's not going back into drug dealing. No, mandatory 5 years in prison, mandating the seizure by the DEA and FBI of the assets belonging to accused drug dealers. So before they're even convicted, complete violation of the Constitution. Joe Biden was pushing laws that have allowed for people's homes, entire homes, cars, and all their belongings to be stolen and then auctioned off by the DEA, which in itself, it's unconstitutional. It's criminal. Some of these people were found innocent or not guilty. Joe Biden was pushing that. Joe Biden contributed to the crisis in urban America by locking so many people up without consideration for their circumstances. And then at the end of it all, close to the end of his life, because we're going to just watch him drool away the rest of his life when he leaves the White House, after committing the Holocaust of our time, sponsoring a genocide in Gaza, he pardons his own son, who was a titanic, prolific participant in the crack economy, as well as various other, at least petty crimes he could have been convicted of. When I spent 48 hours in jail for a crime I didn't commit in DC jail, I met a bunch of people who were there for the most minuscule violations, or being accused. There were a few people who were accused of soliciting prostitution. Hunter Biden, he's above the law. The Biden family's above the law. They're also above the ICC.
I want to go to one of my favorite Biden clips. This is about Hunter's work in Ukraine, where Biden was, it was a rare occasion when he was asked, hey, why do you think Hunter Biden was hired for a lucrative energy gas company board seat inside Ukraine? And this is Biden's answer.
Do you think it was wrong for him?
I love this one.
Position, knowing that it was really because that company wanted access to you?
Well, that's not true. You're saying things you do not know what you're talking about. No one said that. Who said that?
Don't you think that it's just one of those things where people think, well, that seems kind of sleazy. Why would he have that job if not for who his father was?
Because he's a very bright guy.
I guess
because he's a very bright guy. And actually, what's funny is that was edited. There's some weird edit there. So they took out something, I don't know what, but it's edited, but they left that part in.
Question I'm kind of asking is, was it right?
His appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he said he regretted having done it.
Yeah. He's a very bright guy. That's why he was given, someone with no experience at all in the energy field was given a lucrative board seat on a Ukrainian energy company a few months after his father's administration backed the overthrow of the government there. And there's all sorts of shady things. And then, of course, Biden goes ahead and brags about getting the prosecutor who was investigating that company, Burisma, fired, and threatening to withhold, $1 billion in U.S. loans to Ukraine unless he was fired. And the question is, why would the U.S. care so much about who is Ukraine's prosecutor general? And is it worth leveraging $1 billion in loans for? Especially after recently that same prosecutor general, and this came out not too long ago, Shokin, he was praised by the Obama administration for doing his job properly. And all of a sudden, Biden changes that tune and threatens to, withhold U.S. loans unless he gets fired. And there were meetings. There were moments when Biden met with Joe Biden talked to people from Burisma, arranged by his son. So there's all sorts of shady stuff going on there. Is it indictable? I don't know. But now it looks like Hunter Biden's protected from that because of his father's blanket pardon.
I mean, I remember when this was dismissed as disinformation, that this had anything to do with Hunter Biden.
I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team, or others, to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a bitch. Got fired.
That was at the Council on Foreign Relations. I remember watching that live and I couldn't believe what I saw, because the prosecutor, Shokin, was looking into Burisma, where his son was getting $80,000 a month as a board member with no experience in gas.
And I recently interviewed Andrei Tilachenko, who actually, I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
Great interview.
And he worked actually under Shokin in that office. He's a former Ukrainian diplomat who's become a whistleblower, who's spoken out about the U.S. role in the Maidan coup and the role of people like the Joe Biden in corrupting post-coup Ukraine. And one of the things that Andre told me in the interview is that Shokin, who he worked under, was doing his job, that he wasn't corrupt. That was Andre's opinion. And Andre went on to work in the Ukrainian embassy inside D.C., where he witnessed the collusion with the Democratic Party in trying to, undermine the Trump campaign back in 2016. There's so many layers to this. And, Hunter Biden being pardoned, yeah, that's definitely a part of that story. Because, again, the fact that Joe Biden goes back and retroactively covers 2014, includes that in the period of the pardon, that just raises red lights and red flags. And the fact that Biden, said that that's his Achilles heel. He's such a blowhard. And he's so cocky. He has a long record of just blurting out things he's not supposed to say. So there's that where he brags about, basically coercing Ukraine into firing the prosecutor who was investigating his son's company. Then you have the time when he admitted that in Syria, that he complained that U.S. allies, by which he meant the U.S. as well. He didn't admit that part, but U.S. allies were arming an insurgency. He said that was dominated by Al Qaeda and ISIS. He had to go apologize to Turkey and Qatar and the UAE and Saudi Arabia for that, because you're not supposed to say that. And then the time when, early on after Russia invaded, he gave that speech in Poland, I think, where he said, for God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power, referring to Putin. So he was admitting that his whole aim in Ukraine was to undermine Russia at the point where there's regime change inside Moscow. So that's what Biden is always, that he's so cocky and he's so kind of out of it and so just consumed with his own, agenda, that he blurts out the truth sometimes, and he makes very clear what his agenda is, and that clip is a good example of it.
Yeah, and then we were just told Shokin's corrupt, and this has nothing to do with his son. Well, then they wouldn't have made it the pardon retroactive to 2014.